Hey Canada, ready for some political theatre that's more twisted than a Tim Hortons lineup during Roll Up the Rim season? Because Danielle Smith just walked into the room with a pipeline proposal and David Eby standing in the doorway with his arms crossed like a bouncer at the world's most expensive club. And spoiler alert, the cover charge is lifting a 50-year-old tanker ban. Buckle up, because this interprovincial drama is spicier than a bag of all-dressed chips. So here's the deal. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is standing in Calgary on Monday, talking to reporters, and she's basically trying to sell British Columbia on a pipeline project while admitting she knows they don't want it. It's like showing up to your neighbor's house with a construction plan to dig through their backyard and opening with, "I totally get that you hate this idea, but hear me out." The audacity is honestly impressive. Smith says she understands BC doesn't want to expand port infrastructure along its coast, which is political speak for, "I know you don't want oil tankers parked in your pristine waters like it's a maritime parking lot." But then she pivots with the optimism of someone who's never been told no at a potluck. She's hopeful they can have a constructive conversation about using existing ports. Existing ports. As if David Eby is just going to say, "Oh, existing infrastructure? Well, why didn't you say so? Let me roll out the welcome mat for your bitumen." Now let's rewind to Sunday, because this is where things get deliciously complicated. David Eby, BC's Premier, goes on CTV Question Period and drops a bombshell that's softer than his previous stance but still has more conditions than a rental agreement in downtown Vancouver. After months of saying absolutely not to a bitumen pipeline, Eby throws open a tiny window of possibility. He says he's open to discussing a pipeline if, and this is a massive if, the tanker ban stays in place. Read that again. He wants a pipeline without the tankers. It's like ordering a pizza but demanding it arrives without the delivery driver. How exactly does that work? Well, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Eby's anxiety, as he puts it, is all about the oil tanker ban, which he calls the foundational social license piece for tens of billions of dollars of investment in BC translation. If you mess with the tanker ban, you're messing with the entire economic and environmental deal that British Columbia has built its coastal identity on. But wait, there's more context we need to unpack here, and it involves Prime Minister Mark Carney entering the chat like a mediator at a family reunion gone wrong. Last week, Carney and Smith signed what's being called a historic memorandum of understanding. Historic. That's government speak for "we wrote some stuff down and shook hands for the cameras." This MOU outlines the conditions needed for a new oil pipeline to the Pacific to actually happen. Sounds great, right? Except for one tiny problem. David Eby wasn't invited to this particular party. Leading up to the announcement, Eby was out there calling it unacceptable that BC had been excluded from these discussions. And honestly, can you blame him? Alberta and the federal government are sitting at the table sketching out plans for infrastructure that runs through his province, and nobody thought to give him a heads up? That's like planning a surprise party in someone's house without telling them they're hosting. Eby warned that any exemption to the tanker ban would threaten projects already in development on BC's north coast and shatter consensus among coastal First Nations. And that brings us to the heart of this entire mess. Let's talk about this tanker ban because it's not some new policy cooked up last year during a slow news cycle. This thing has roots deeper than a Douglas fir. Officially enacted in 2019, the ban actually stems from a moratorium on oil tanker traffic that's been in place since the 1970s. We're talking 5 decades of keeping oil tankers away from BC's north coast. The ban specifically prohibits oil tankers carrying over 12,500 metric tons of crude or persistent oil from docking, loading, or unloading at ports along the north coast. That's the stretch from the northern tip of Vancouver. For 50 years, this has been the deal. No massive oil tankers threading through some of the most ecologically sensitive and culturally significant waters in Canada. It's not just policy, it's identity. It's how coastal communities have protected their economies, their environments, and their ways of life. And speaking of those communities, Coastal First Nations President Marilyn Slett came out swinging after the MOU announcement last Thursday. She made it crystal clear, they will never tolerate exemptions to an oil tanker ban that has existed for over 50 years. Not maybe, not we'll think about it, never. Slett emphasized that the ban is foundational to protecting their economy and their way of life. This isn't abstract political posturing. For First Nations communities along the coast, this is about sovereignty, about protecting waters that have sustained them for thousands of years, and about ensuring that economic development doesn't come at the cost of environmental devastation. When Smith talks about having constructive conversations, she's walking into a room where the people across the table have already drawn a very clear line in the sand. Or in this case, the seabed. So where does this leave us? Smith wants a pipeline. EB might consider a pipeline but absolutely won't budge on the tanker ban. First Nations communities are saying don't even think about touching the ban. And somehow, Alberta's oil needs to get to international markets because right now it's landlocked and selling at a discount. It's a puzzle where every piece is the wrong shape and everyone's arguing over whether we're even building the right picture. Smith's optimism about using existing ports sounds nice in theory, but the logistics of moving Alberta bitumen to Pacific markets without lifting the tanker ban is like trying to fill a swimming pool with a teaspoon. Sure, technically possible, but wildly impractical. The federal government's caught in the middle trying to balance Alberta's economic ambitions with BC's environmental priorities and Indigenous rights. Mark Carney's MOU was supposed to be the groundwork for compromise, but instead it's highlighted just how far apart these provinces really are. And here's the kicker, this isn't just about pipelines and tankers. This is about how Canada navigates regional interests, environmental responsibility, and economic development in an era where every decision feels like it has national consequences. Do we prioritize getting Alberta's resources to market, or do we protect BC's coast and honor decades of Indigenous-led environmental stewardship? The answer, frustratingly, is probably both, which means nobody's getting exactly what they want. What's clear is that Smith's hope for buy-in on lifting the tanker ban is running headfirst into a wall of opposition that's been standing for 50 years. EB's conditional openness is interesting, but without a tanker ban exemption, it's hard to see how the economics work. And First Nations voices aren't background noise in this conversation, they're leading it, and they've made their position unambiguous. So Smith can hope all she wants, but hope isn't infrastructure, and it's definitely not going to move millions of barrels of oil across the Rockies and into international shipping lanes. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about what's happening in Canadian politics, and honestly, we need more people like you paying attention. Hit that subscribe button and join the Canadian Insights crew because we're dropping videos daily on the political drama unfolding across this country. Drop a comment below and let me know where you stand. Should Alberta get its pipeline? Should the tanker ban be sacred? Can we find a compromise that doesn't leave everyone furious? Let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button so more Canadians can stay informed. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one where we'll dive into whatever political chaos Canada serves up next. Trust me, there's always something brewing.